350 persons have been wrongfully convicted of homicide or capital rape since 1900. The death sentence makes it impossible to correct such errors. If, on the other hand, the death penalty is not used, convicted individuals who are later determined to be innocent can be released and paid for the period they were wrongfully imprisoned. The case for and against the death sentence both appeal to the value we place on life and value we place on achieving the greatest balance of good over evil. Also, each emphasizes for our dedication to justice. Is it necessary to seek justice at any cost? The death penalty violates the rule of law. Its implementation is frequently arbitrary and it is always irreversible, depriving an individual of the opportunity to benefit from fresh evidence of new legislation that would cause the reversal of a conviction or the reversal of the death sentence. The majority of capital offenses are committed in the heat of a moment. The majority of capital crimes are committed during the times of high emotional stress or while under the influence of drugs or alcohol when logical reasoning is impaired. Many capital crimes under the influence of drugs. Many capital crimes are perpetrated by people who are emotionally or mentally unwell. In such circumstances, violence is done by people who are oblivious to the implications for themselves and others. According to Parliamentarians for Global Actions, despite the growing isolation of states that still employ the death penalty, the global executions have known a significant increase in 2022. Amnesty International reported that in 2022, at least 883 individuals were executed, excluding China, where figures kept secret, marking the highest number since 2017. 993 in China excluded. Alarmingly, 93% of these reported executions occurred in the Middle East and North Africa region, particularly in Iran. More than 576 reported executions in Saudi Arabia, 196 reported executions.
Yeah, now I'm ready.
Are you guys ready? As we stated before, the death penalty should not be abolished for a multitude of reasons. This tactic is a useful and necessary tool that we must keep continuing this practice for the benefit of the whole majority. The death penalty, as defined as a punishment of a crime, is only used for violent crimes and commit capital offenses such as murder, treason, genocide, and etc. The criminal conduct must include murder, or a death must have resulted in order of the death penalty to be among the possible sanctions sourced from the United States Sentencing Guidelines 2021. Individuals would not receive the death penalty if they commit any forms of non-violent crimes. Again, the criminal conduct must include a murder or a death must have resulted for a death penalty to be among sanctions. The process of receiving the death penalty follows as such. From the Death Penalty Information Center, arrest, getting taken into custody, arraignment, defendant is brought in before court to hear charges and enter a plea, preliminary hearing, and criminal hearing to determine if there is enough evidence to prosecute, grand jury, a body of people sit in for at least a month to decide if the indictments should be issued. An indictment is a formal written accusation of a crime affirmed by the grand jury presented to court. Information, formal criminal charge filed by a prosecutor without the aid of the grand jury. Hearing on a pre-trial motion, judicial sessions held to decide issues of fact or law before the trial. Intention to seek the death penalty. Before the trial, the prosecution announces its intent for the defendant if found guilty. Guilty phase trial, the jury must decide whether the prosecution has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder or at least one special circumstance. We have the penalty phase trial. The penalty phase is a part of the criminal trial where the judge or jury decides the punishment for a defendant who has been found guilty. Then we have our direct appeal. The direct appeal is a way for a defendant to have their challenge heard by a federal appellate court. After the trial has rendered their decision. Post-conviction review, the court will review a petition and decide whether to conduct an evidentiary hearing. Federal habeas corpus, a procedure under which a federal court may review length of an individual's incarceration. Clemency, the president has the authority to grant clemency, meaning that mercy or leniency, and then we have execution, putting to death as a legal penalty. As you can see, the process is long and lengthy, and it is meant to be this way. The death penalty also serves as a deterrent for crime. This is that the fear of facing the ultimate punishment may discourage potential criminals from committing violent acts. There is a chance that individuals are much less likely to commit violent crimes if they are certain that they will be caught or punished. It being used incorrectly sometimes does not mean it shouldn't be used ever and abolished completely. In modern times, we have more advanced technology such as forensics, surveillance, which prevents and limits the ability of wrongful conviction. Our Constitution states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. This means that those who wrote banning cruel and unusual punishments also thought due process of law. There were situations in which a person could be deprived of life. That means execution. The death penalty existed before the Eighth Amendment was created. The Eighth Amendment states that excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments. With all this in mind, the framers of the Constitution already considered the practice while drafting the rules of the law. The Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty does not violate the Eighth Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment, but the Eighth Amendment does shape certain procedural aspects regarding when a jury may use death penalty and how it must be carried out. Source the Legal Information Institute. It is a last choice that is used only for the most inhumane crimes to occur. The existence of the death penalty is not racist. The contribution to systematic racism is formed, and the lengthy judicial process that's even considered. If we want to fix our country's justice system, we must start with addressing the cause of systemic racism, such as overpolicing in Black and brown neighborhoods, not the consequences. We must consider We must concede the U.S. justice system is not the best of misuse, but the misuse of a tool does not mean it should be lost and abolished entirely. And that's what I'm sorry. I forgot.
Alrighty, the grand crossfire is about to happen. It's 3 minutes long. Everybody gets to participate. Ready when you are. Joel, any time before grand crossfire?
Okay. Can we use 1 minute, please?
Yes, 1 minute's on for 2 years. Let's go. 1 minute. And just before we start the timer, don't be afraid to think outside the box. If someone asks you a question, it's yes or no. Yes, you should respond to their question, but that doesn't mean like no is the last. You know what I mean? Like it's like yes or no, no but. You know, like you have good reasons why you chose the arguments you've chosen. Just make those over. Explain to Stacey. Okay. All right. 3 minutes. Grand crossfire. Ready, set, go.
Do you guys believe that one of the most, based on y'all's moral argument, do you think the most important thing is keeping as many humans alive as possible? Yes? Well, based on the reoffense rate of violent criminals, the best way to do this would be to take one life over potentially many, many other lives.
Are you saying that the death penalty is a deterrent?
That as well, but it also deters, like I mentioned, the reoffense rate for violent criminals is around 30%. The reoffense rate for criminals that were given capital punishment is 0. This results in more lives saved.
Not to mention the sheer amount of lives lost in the prison system due to violent offenders being mixed in.
So we do have evidence based on that current mention. So recently said that United Nations General Assembly, there's no conclusive evidence that there's a deterrent within the death penalty.
Yes, but it does stop the actual criminals themselves from reoffending. Even if there was no deterrence, which there is some.
Someone who is dead cannot possibly reoffend. That is physically impossible.
Also before you mentioned that, the death penalty, if there's a mistake, it's an accident. So there can be no accidents regarding lives, we can't afford that. So do you believe accidentally taking lives is more lucrative?
Well, they're already on death penalty. The accident is like their lives weren't taken until a little bit longer.
Just because we make a little less accidents doesn't mean something should be abolished completely.
You stated yourself that the rate of that is only 3%.
3% is enough to stop doing it, in my opinion, because if there is such an issue with it, and it's not something that's been changed or that has been adjusted, and it's still continuing to happen, is that morally correct to you? That the accident should keep happening? An accident is a one-time thing.
I think families deserve closure, and victims deserve closure of that, and some of them have wished that they could kill themselves.
Would you say the same for people who are innocent that are placed on death row?
No.
The goal is to avoid that. But as we've mentioned, most of the cases you presented were 30+ years old. In modern times, we have better surveillance, forensics, all sorts of technology that can prevent wrongful convictions.
Do you have any of those cases present?
Of where forensics will be?
So that are more recent? You stated that we don't have any that are recent.
What's the one where the guy?
You can say it.
Alright, time. Alright, guys. I think we have about a minute left probably. Would y'all like to take that time before that final round?
We have a minute, they have 30 seconds.
Okay.
But we also have 2 speakers.
Alright, do y'all want to take it or leave it on the table or?
We don't be good at getting pros and cons out here.
Maybe even after.
Or you could take a break between
Yeah,
you guys, I
maybe.
guess. Okay,
You need that break?
so
But
just,
they're first.
okay, so just to reiterate, if, I won't hold you to the extra minute, but if that ends up happening, take it, both sides take that extra minute. And again, you're not judged on whether or not you win the debate, just letting you guys know, it's like your individual performance. Alright, do you guys want the 30 seconds? Let's do it.
Okay, so we on the affirmative side do believe that the death penalty should be abolished. We believe that the death penalty has caused many different racial disparities. People of color do tend to come from underprivileged backgrounds more often than white people do, meaning they cannot afford private lawyers, investigations, appeals, and other actions that would help them to avoid the death penalty. And I would like to point out that this point was never refuted by the opposing team. Another point that we have is its lack of effectiveness. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, states that have death penalty laws do not have lower crime rates or murder rates than states without such laws. Another factor is global opinion. So 50 out of 195 recognized nations allow capital punishment, showcasing that it has a history of being abolished and is largely globally frowned upon. I did notice that the negative side said that people can only be put on death row for committing capital crimes. So she emphasized, tried to refute the point that my team made, saying an eye for an eye, a life for a life. But according to the federal death penalty system, they include a few non-homicidal offenses, such as treason and espionage. The definition of treason means the act of betraying someone or something. And espionage, the definition for that, is the practice of spying or using spies, typically by governments, to obtain political and military info. Neither of those are nonviolent crimes, neither of those result in a life being taken, and you can still be put on death row for those. So, I would like to emphasize that. It proves that it is not only capital crimes that can put someone on death row or crimes that result in violence. Brookings research shows that Black families experience higher rates of poverty, less upward mobility, and more downward mobility. Again, this point was not refuted. So it is unconfirmed if there's correlation between having a death penalty and population happiness. Both countries with and without capital punishment made it to the list. However, the majority is no capital punishment. When cross-referenced, population happiness has no correlation to crime rates. So countries with higher crime rates, like America, it doesn't really correlate to population happiness. And I just largely want to emphasize the fact that people of color do experience more poverty than non-people of color. And it was just never refuted the fact that, 72% of the cases approved for death penalty prosecution involved minority defendants. Not only that, but it is obviously mainly people of color that are living in poverty, and it is biased against people experiencing poverty. So, according to the International Federation of Human Rights, 95% of prisoners on death row in the United States come from underprivileged backgrounds, and the criminalization of poverty has increased a person's risk for arrest. The high cost of education, mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and other treatment can push people into crime. Once they are put into the criminal justice system, people with money have enough to afford private lawyers, investigations, appeals, and other actions that would help them to avoid the death penalty. People with no money have to rely on the underfunded public defender. And because of this, the criminal justice system tends to punish those with limited resources rather than those who are actually committing the most heinous crimes. The death penalty disproportionately affects people experiencing poverty, which means it is unjust and unfair. And I don't hear any evidence from the opposing team to refute that. So, that's fair.
Just want to make sure.
Okay, so I will put about 3 minutes on this and then give you okay, ready?
Yep. Alright, so I would like to start out by saying our opposing team did bring up new points in their speech, which in their ending part, but the main thing I want to point out is a lot of the issues they point out stem from racism. We don't realistically have a way to solve for that. If they have a new way that they would like to share with everyone, I'm more than welcome to hear it. But start out with, just to reiterate our points, all our crimes, they need to be capital level. There must be a life taken in order for the death penalty to even be brought up. It is a long process, so it should not be the first option. The wrongful execution rate is very low nowadays, and we don't release people, or I don't believe we should have people of mass murderers roaming the street because the reoffense rate is 30%, and versus the 0% that we have if they are executed. There was also the argument of price. That is a good thing. If it is expensive, that is just even more reason to use it sparingly. And they did point out that 3% of executions that have failure, that is still a 97% success rate. Numerically, that is better. And just to bring out examples of people who did get released or released back into the wild, Ted Bundy, he murdered way too many people. We have one too many documentaries on that. and John Wayne Garcia, who, again, got released and committed a bunch more crimes. And that is my time.
Can we use our last, do we have a minute?
Let's take a minute, does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Can you sound confident when you're saying it? Say it with your chest. Don't curse. Say it loudly and assertively. Yeah, don't say it. Okay, maybe not. Okay, just be assertive. You got this. Okay. Come on. Alright. Okay.
All right, guys.
Are you ready?
Yeah,
Are you
ready?
Alright, so today my team and I have argued for the negative side of the resolution that the death penalty should be abolished. In regards to race, our opponents claim that racial discrimination is a core reason as to why the death penalty is a bad form of justice. To combat this simple-minded thinking, we have asserted that the death penalty contribution to systematic racism, if there is any, is a drop in the bucket to much larger problems. Our opponents falsely claim that the espionage and the treason are not capital crimes and do not result in death, while they are capital crimes. As for making sure the inmates can't reoffend, our team has provided statistics on the reoffense rate that weakens the affirmative side's argument. We would not want these people back on the streets or even in prisons where they can still do harm. Our opponents did not even acknowledge the economic aspect of the death penalty. While this is true, our team weakened their argument by using their claim by arguing increased expense is a good thing, meaning that the death penalty will be used as a last resort since it is so expensive. Our opposition has claimed that there has not been much change in the penalty racially, but the change majority of their sources were 30 years old. Our opponents didn't introduce any moral framework until their third speaker, while we stated we are using utilitarianism perspective since the beginning. Their argument structure is weaker because of it. We have more reasons as to why the death penalty should not be abolished with more evidence and more citations. Although all of the reasons, evidence, statistics, citations, and examples that we have mentioned in this debate are reasons why I believe we have won. Thank you, Judge, for your time.
Good job. Claps are very appropriate. That was a really good debate. Yay! And you guys are done with like a huge part of the performance.
Woo!
Okay.
It's a hard word.
It's a hard word.
It's a hard word.
I went so
I suck at it.
I
forgot I wrote
Yeah,
This
you
wrote so much.
Oh, I panicked.
All right. Guys, again, that was a really, really, really good debate. I don't have a ton of feedback other than just like, I think with more practice, you guys would feel more confident standing in your arguments because I think everyone did good research. I think everyone like practiced. I don't think there was any lack of preparation or like thoughtfulness. So just like more experience debating. I wish you guys could do multiple rounds. I know that you guys are like, I would not want to do multiple rounds, but that would be cool to like get more fluid with it. As far as who won, I actually need to think about it for a second because I think there were strong arguments on both sides and there were also like some vulnerabilities. So you'll see that in your feedback. And I'll just like let you guys know a blurb of who I thought won once I had a chance. But yeah, it was so nice to meet you guys. Thanks for taking a comm class.
Great meeting you.
Happy holidays. Yay, great. Yeah, it's right up next to my computer.
Well, I think some other stuff. I don't. We can borrow my pen.
Together.
Yeah.
Woohoo!